Hello, and thank you for tuning in to today's Interfaith Connections. I am your host, Jackie Fuller. For our first segment, we have a gentleman who is part of a movement that's happening throughout the world over a glass of beer. Who could have thought spirituality would have a beer component to it? But this gentleman has come up with a concept that is gaining a lot of popularity in our country. His name is Bryan Berghoef, and he is a pastor and author of the book Pub Theology. Welcome, Bryan, to the show today.
Thank you, Jackie.
Now, can you share with our audience some background information about yourself?
Sure. I live in Michigan and am originally from here, though I've lived in Alaska, Florida, recently Washington, D.C., among other places. I am a pastor in the Christian Reformed Church of North America, which is a small Protestant denomination that's similar to Presbyterianism. And I'm married to my wife, Christy, who is also an author, and we have 4 lovely children.
Now, can you provide us some information about pub theology?
Absolutely. I first heard of the idea of pub theology nearly 7 years ago from a church in London, England, that was gathering people together in their community at a local pub or tavern over a beer, and they opened it up and said, all perspectives here are welcome. And I was pastoring a church in Michigan at the time, and when I heard about this, I thought, our community needs that. My church community, but also the wider community. We need a place where the table is open, where anyone can join the conversation, and all perspectives are welcome.
And what is the process to start such an organization or meetup like Pub Theology?
Sure, it can be fairly simple. And there are groups, as you noted, happening all over the country and even all over the world. And it's as simple as deciding you're going to get together, finding a local pub or brewery or bar that is conducive to the idea, putting up a poster or two saying, hey, we're going to have these open conversations about topics of life, faith, philosophy, meaning, ethics, and getting the word out. And that can be telling some friends, it can be putting a notice in a local weekly or newspaper, certainly taking advantage of social media, and then showing up at the right time and cultivating the conversation.
And have you noticed there have been any particular days that people seem to prefer to come out to a particular event like this? Do they prefer to come on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or a weekend?
It's a great question. I've heard of groups meeting on almost any of those days. Currently, I'm leading a group on Monday evenings and on Wednesday evenings. I've led groups on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I've tried to avoid the weekend because pubs and bars tend to be really busy, and it's so busy that it's hard to have conversation and be able to hear each other.
Right.
So I've tended to lean toward days a little bit earlier in the week.
Okay. And can you provide an example of what does it look like when someone comes to a pub theology event for the first time? So can you describe what that experience would be like for them?
Great question. We had this experience just last night at our pub theology gathering in Holland, Michigan. We meet at a tap house where they've got 40 to 50 different local and national beers, craft beers on tap. And we meet in kind of a side room where it tends to be a little bit quieter. And we had a few folks who showed up because they'd heard about it, but had never come. And so we have a sign sort of noting that Pub Theology is meeting that night with an arrow pointing to where we are. We want to make it accessible, welcoming. And so they, approached where we were and said, hey, we're new. And we invited them to grab a seat, order a beverage, could be a beer, a glass of wine, or if you don't drink alcohol, a soda or a glass of tea. And we go around the group and introduce ourselves, and so we can all know each other's names. And And then what I do is bring a half sheet of paper with 5 or 6 topics and questions that kind of help the conversation get rolling. And the opening question is often something on the lighter side, just to get conversation going and help us feel more comfortable with each other. Something like, what is your favorite color? Or if you were a vegetable, what vegetable would you be? Something fun like that.
Okay. And we have a picture of a sample of what that sheet looks like so our audience can see how the questions and the heading is set up on the sheet that people read during their discussions. So we have that
Great.
to share with everyone.
Great, that's helpful.
What type of people come to pub theology? Are they like theologians? Are they faith junkies? Are they seekers or doubters, skeptics? Who comes to those type of things?
Great question. It tends to be a mix of all of the above. We have realized that the title Pub Theology might be off-putting for some because theology sounds like a sort of dusty academic venture, and so we really try to stress the open conversation where all perspectives are welcome aspect of the gatherings. And so we have people from all across the spectrum. We'll have religious clergy come, so pastors, ministers, rabbis, and so forth. We also have people, as you said, who are seeking, who are maybe floating in between commitment to a local faith institution or congregation. We have atheists, humanists, we've had Hindu, Muslim, Jewish folks joining us, Wiccan friends. So really across the board. And I think that's what really gives the conversation in the group the energy that makes it dynamic, engaging, and a chance to learn.
What are the strengths of pub theology? What is so unique about sitting over a glass of beer at a pub discussing faith, ethics, or just any topic? What do you see the strengths are of gathering those people together?
That's a good question. I think all of us want to have these kinds of conversations in our world because we realize there's a lot of different viewpoints. There's a lot of contentiousness. Relationships are fractured. We want to divide people up into different camps, whether that's political or religious or something else. And I think what pub theology at its best does is create a non-confrontational, low-key atmosphere where we can have those conversations and be okay that we might disagree about things. And so I think the setting of the pub sort of signals that this is going to be a relaxed, informal atmosphere. So we're not in a pressure situation that maybe a more formal setting like a sanctuary or even a university setting might provide. We're just sitting back, having a pint, being ourselves, and we want to learn from each other while also having the chance to say what we ourselves think. Okay.
What have been the challenges of getting a pub theology group together? Any conflicts of within the discussions or even maybe trying to find a place to set up a pub theology gathering? Can you share with our audience any challenges you experienced?
Sure. I think I can think of a couple challenges, including trying to really get a diverse audience around the table. That can be a challenge depending on your setting, depending on how and where you're getting the word out. And so for folks who are thinking about starting a group, I'd really recommend that you look for some churches, organizations, religious communities that are different from your own to let them know you're gathering. Find a humanist group, find a local synagogue or faith tradition that's different from your own, and let them know about it, and certainly use social media as well as a way to convey what you're about. And I think you can't say enough that all perspectives are welcome. Some folks are afraid, well, this is just one community's attempt to gain more converts or to really monopolize the conversation. And so I think if you really stress that, no, this is open and we're here for any of you to share your mind and even to have the last word, I think that helps people realize it is a safe space. I think a second challenge can be during the conversations themselves. When some folks perhaps are new and not quite understanding the dynamics, and they're eager to find a place like this where they can share their ideas, but maybe they're not quite aware of their tendency to dominate the conversation. And so I think it helps to have a person who can help facilitate the conversation and help bring in some quieter voices around the table, make sure no one person is monopolizing the time, and making sure that differing views feel respected, even if it's not the majority perspective.
Okay. You're also the author of a book by the same name. What inspired you to write that book?
Good question. Well, I like to write. I've been blogging and writing for years, and the more I began to share my experience with pub theology, I began to hear people interested in that and also hear about other groups doing it. And I thought this is worth writing down so that folks can hear at least one community's efforts in creating this kind of open dialogue space. And it was a ton of fun to write, and it's really opened up connections for me across the country of people who have either already been doing these kinds of conversations, who have read the book and been inspired to start their own group. Mm-hmm. In fact, we've created recently a website that's sort of a network for people to find out about these kinds of conversations across the country at pubtheology.com, and there's a map of North America with over 100 such gatherings. And so it's really been a grassroots thing that's springing up all over the place.
Well, it's good. It's good. I think dialogue is very healthy, and I noticed through my experiences with pub theology, it does provide more of a laid-back social atmosphere, because maybe in some cases people may find faith communities a tad intimidating, especially with all the rituals and processes that you go through when you're either joining or learning about one's tradition. So I noticed that has been one of the pluses of pub theology in itself. Next question for you, Bryan. What was the inspiration for the title and the cover of your book?
Yeah, so the title, just thought we'd be simple and say what it is. Pub Theology, subtitle, Beer, Conversation, and God. Mm-hmm. And I realize that might be slightly provocative for some religious communities where alcohol and religion don't necessarily mix. And so
Right.
That was intentionally part of the point, to say, maybe some barriers are broken down just by thinking of these things even happening at the same time. And so then the cover design is intended to look like a glass of beer. So it's attempted to look inviting, refreshing, something you might want to pick up and read over a good beer.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And how did you get involved in writing?
Boy, that's a good question. As a pastor, you're writing every week in a sense, if you're giving regular sermons or having opportunities to preach. And so I began to realize that I wanted to write beyond that. Mm-hmm. And so I started writing for a local newspaper up in northern Michigan, maybe 8 or 9 years ago. I've written for a number of magazines and written for the Huffington Post and Sojourners and some other known websites, as well as my own blog, which has been happening for maybe over 5 years now. And so I just find it a medium where I can work through some of my own thoughts, because I'm a person in process. I'm reading a lot, learning and growing, encountering new ideas. And I find that writing allows me a platform to share beyond just my own local faith community some of the things I'm learning. And if others find that helpful, I'm happy to share. And I know I certainly benefit from the writing of many, many others.
Mm-hmm. What is your mission or vision with your book?
Good. I think the mission and vision is to help people see that these conversations are happening and find hope in that, because I think some people have felt in their particular churches or faith communities that there isn't space for their questions, there isn't room for their doubts, there isn't a place where they're welcome with some of their views that might be seen as heretical or outside the norm. And I want people to hear loud and clear, there is a space where you are welcome. There are spaces for you to explore your spiritual journey and your questions with others. And so I hope the book can inspire people to be encouraged, to be brave, to take new steps in their own faith journey that maybe they hadn't realized there was a platform or a space for.
Okay. And speaking of which, with the different audiences, what are the goals you hope to accomplish through your book towards religious or interfaith dialogue?
Great. I think what the book can do is help, I hope, at some small level, people outside of the Christian sphere realize, since I'm coming from a Christian perspective, realize that there are Christians who are open to dialogue. I think sometimes Christians get the bad rap, sometimes deservedly so, of being not open to new ideas, not open to dialogue, not open to changing their minds. And so I hope the book can signal to people coming from other religious traditions, we're here, we're open. Please come teach us about your tradition. Help us learn how you connect with God, or how your community thinks about things like justice and meaning and identity. So I want to be open, and I want others to hear that there are other Christians who are open too.
Okay. How are people reacting to your book so far? What has been the feedback?
I've gotten a lot of good feedback. I think a lot of people have cheered the idea of being able to have a beer and yet have something substantive happening at the same time. And it's really such a simple concept that I think people are like, oh, of course, we should be doing this. Why aren't I doing this? And so I think a lot of people have just really given me a lot of positive feedback. Thanks for writing this. Thanks for saying it's okay to gather together in this setting and have it be a meaningful thing, and not be something that I'm in trouble for or can't talk about with certain people in my church or faith community. And so I've gotten a lot of positive feedback. At the same time, I've gotten some pushback, and some folks have said I'm too open-minded, too willing to hear other views, or that I shouldn't be mixing alcohol with religion. And I certainly understand the caution. We're not there to overindulge. We're there to enjoy in moderation. We're there to respect those who see a problem with mixing those two and want them to know they're still welcome to join us and have, as I said, a Diet Coke or a glass of water. The important thing is not what we're drinking. The important thing is the open conversation and the welcoming atmosphere.
Okay. I have a picture from one of your pub theology gatherings, and I noticed, particularly from the ones I've attended and some of the pictures I've seen online and through my research, that there tend to be more men versus women that attend pub theology events. Do you think the appeal of this type of environment will cater more towards men because maybe the environment may be more comfortable to the male energy, versus in a lot of cases sometimes people see churches as predominantly feminine energy? Has anyone ever mentioned those kind of differences with the sexes coming to a pub theology session?
It's a great question, Jackie, and we have had that question come up, particularly on evenings where there are more men than women in attendance. It can depend on the evening and on the setting. I think, though, you're right. In general, we have tended to have slightly more men than women, and I'm not sure why that is. It may be that men find that setting more comfortable, though I think that isn't necessarily so. I've connected with a number of women who, are big beer aficionados in their own right, or who enjoy a good glass of wine and are happy for this setting. And again, maybe we're not doing a good enough job of communicating all are welcome, including all genders. So we could probably work on that a little bit. But I think, as you said, that often in spiritual communities, it's a struggle to get men to show up. And so I think perhaps the strength of pub theology is that men are showing up. And so perhaps it's a venue where we can connect with men who are looking for venues to explore their spirituality or to convey their own faith journey or their own ideas about philosophy and life.
I'm also curious to ask you, in regards to St. Patrick's Day, have you participated or heard anything in regards to a pub theology experience on St. Patrick's Day?
Ha! That's a good question. I just missed it because I believe our recent St. Patrick's was on a Tuesday, and I have a group that meets on Monday and on Wednesday, so we kind of got the beforehand and the afterglow, perhaps. But I have had a pub theology on St. Patrick's in the past, and it tends to be busier at the bar, and that can be a little noisier, but I think a plus is that other people see that you're gathering, and maybe they hadn't known that kind of gathering was happening, and they might say, hey, this sounds really interesting, can we pull up a chair? And so I really want to stress that if you're doing a gathering like this, don't be shy about it, and don't hide off in a corner as a little private group that people can't figure out how to join. Put up a sign on the table or on the wall near you that says Pub Theology, all are welcome. Make it clear that folks are welcome to join you, even if they're just finding out about it as they're showing up that night. Because, new folks are always welcome.
Okay. So what has the response been, I guess, in more of the social settings about meeting around discussing religion and beer? Any particular comments that stood out for you in the discussions? Sometimes, we invariably talk about the different beers we're having to drink and why we ordered, an imperial stout or a hoppy IPA or a lager. And so it is a fun time to just talk about some of the differences in the craft beer scene and why do you like one style over the other. And that can be a fun, low-key way to get to know each other before we probe into some of the more deep and personal topics of faith and meaning and so forth. And so I think it's been a really positive response. I will note, though, that one time at one of our pub theology gatherings in D.C., we had a gentleman who came, and he was quiet the whole time, didn't order anything to drink, didn't talk much during the conversation, and at the end, after we were officially done, he noted that he was really uncomfortable with the idea of being in that setting of a bar. And he thought it was inappropriate, in fact, and wrong, coming from his view as a conservative Christian, didn't think alcohol and religion belonged in the same sphere. My response was to remind him that one of the first miracles we have recorded of Jesus doing in the Gospels is of solving the problem when they ran out of wine at a wedding, and in fact bringing a whole lot more wine into the celebration. And I did that not to try to win an argument, but rather to say that there's biblical precedent for seeing wine, beer, alcohol as a gift from God, enjoyed in appropriate ways, in fitting and moderate ways. Right. And how does your faith play a role in your work?
Well, as someone who claims to be a follower of Jesus, I really see Jesus as someone who went out of his way to go where people were, not to sit in the religious institutions and wait for people to come to him. And so I envision pub theology as going where people already are and saying, let's connect, let's talk about life, let's talk about faith. And so that's one aspect where my motivation as a follower of Jesus is to say, let's not just expect people to show up to our churches. Let's get out where people already are and have the conversations, join the conversations that they're already having. And then I think a second motivation is that I think pub theology is about breaking down stereotypes. And I think we need to do that. When we're not engaging people of other perspectives, it's real easy for us to sit back and say, all atheists think X, or all Jewish people are Y. And when we sit down next to someone, we realize they're a human being just like I am. And we may have disagreements over a number of things, but we have a lot of similarities. We want a peaceful world. We want flourishing neighborhoods, communities, and societies. And there's nothing to be scared of. And in fact, there may be opportunities to learn from each other and work together for the common good.
Awesome. And for our viewers, Bryan, how can they find out more information about your book?
Great question. They can go over to pubtheology.com and click on resources, and they'll see a link to my book. I've also written a short ebook entitled Pub Theology 101, a guide to cultivating meaningful conversations at the pub. And that's a book, it's kind of a how-to guide for starting your own pub conversations, as well as hundreds and hundreds of sample discussion topics to get you started.
Okay. And my final question for you is a fun fact, Q&A. What do you like to do for fun?
Well, I am a busy dad of young elementary school age kids, so I love playing games with my kids. I love playing catch with my boys in the backyard. We like to go camping a lot. We love a day at the beach. So spending time with my family is definitely up there, trying to enjoy their youthful energy and try to keep myself young a little bit.
Okay. Thank you so much, Bryan, for joining us on the program today. We appreciate the opportunity to chat with you about pub theology and look forward to learning more about what you're doing, and as well as maybe the opportunity for some of our viewers to go out and have a beer and enjoy the discussion on faith, spirituality, and whatever comes up during the conversation. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me, Jackie.
Sure, you're welcome. And we will be right back with Interfaith Connections.
a lot of people, 9/11 was a wake-up call to wake up and realize who your neighbor was and get to know that person a little bit more and get to show some respect for your neighbor. It started with the idea of combining service and interfaith education and relationship building. You have this opportunity to literally walk shoulder to shoulder, and you look across the room and you look at somebody who looks completely different from you, came from a very different background. They may pray differently, they may, speak a different language, but they believe that you have to work together and you have to live together and you have to respect each other. It's a very moving experience, literally and figuratively.
What a statement to have people of different faiths walking down Embassy Row, stopping in all the houses of worship to recognize our commonality and recognize the good of humanity. There's an opportunity to meet people, greet people, and understand we're part of one family, the human family.
The Roman Catholic Church, along with our head, Pope Francis, is a group very committed to dialogue and reconciliation. We're just part of a larger Catholic world that sees the call of Jesus that all may be one. And in that sense, I think in our world today, that all may be one in an effort to search for peace.
I think we are a model for a lot of communities, not just in this country, but around the world. This is an opportunity for you to bring out the best in your community. We hope to see you at the next Unity Walk.
Welcome back to Interfaith Connections. I am your host, Jackie Fuller. In our next segment, we have the opportunity to speak with an interfaith minister who can give us some perspectives on the work that she does in the community. And her name is Reverend Channahsorah. And we are thankful to have you on the program. Thank you so much. I have lots to learn from you today.
Well, we all have lots to learn. Thank you. Very lovely to be here with you, Jackie. Thanks.
No problem. Now, can you provide our audience some background information about yourself?
Sure. Well, in brief, I was essentially born interfaith. I was born in a family in Baltimore, Maryland, with parents who read to us scripture excerpts and excerpts from stories from all different faiths, brought us up exposed to many faiths, cultures, lifestyles. People were wafting in and out of the house from everywhere, and there was never any we-theyism, you see. I don't ever remember anything about this teaching is the only truth and the only way. And there was an open shore, just openness. And our parents founded the first integrated theater, in fact, as part of their history, their quiet walk in nonviolent openness and not judging any book by any cover type of thing. So this is the setting in which we grew up. Without realizing it. I didn't even think of it that way. You don't think of it that way until you're sort of becoming an adult, you know. And then have also a few years ago been part of many formal teachings and schooling, such as the Shalem Institute in Washington, D.C., transforming community, leading contemplative prayer groups and retreats, which is very much open-hearted and in a spirit of oneness, not just one dogma or faith. And and then the Interfaith Seminary in Manhattan, New York, where I became then later ordained as an interfaith minister. Somewhere in there I got a doctorate, which is, went to undergraduate and then a doctorate in sort of multifaceted, cross-cutting policy sciences, it's called, integrated. You see the theme here?
Right.
Bridging?
Yes.
I think I was a bridge in a previous life.
You never know.
And I continued traditions with my sister children, the nephews. We put Hanukkah gelt on the Christmas tree. We grew up with this. It was not confusing. And we were exposed to Christianity and Judaism from both sides of our parents' faiths, Unitarianism, and for me, very deeply in what's called Sankhya philosophy. Hinduism is the closest for people to understand.
Okay.
That's actually a short response.
Oh, wow. Now, before we go more in depth, people may be curious about your name. Where does your name come from?
Channahsorah was my mother's name. And you can name a child that after the person has deceased. And we were too young for any grandparents to know them in person. Yeah, we came along very late. And so it's Channahsorah in English. The Channahsorah, the essential meaning is grace, gracious, merciful. So just doing nothing else in life than maybe living up or working toward living up to just the meaning of that name, that takes all of life. That's going to be all of life for me. As well as growing up hearing stories about her lovely kind of traits and character and things. So it harkens for me that as well. Okay. I never knew her.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that's special. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the speaker, they hear words and phrases have great import and meaning, as you know, and are powerful. And that a certain meaning with a power and a meaning, an import behind it is a blessing, is a gift for the hearer, the writer, the speaker, the seer of that. So for me to hear it and anyone else, and especially knowing the meaning, really is a reminder and a great gift throughout life.
Now, can you share with our audience a day in the life of an interfaith minister?
Day in the life.
Day in the life.
Yeah, well spotted and well put also, because remember, I am one of many interfaith ministers. So there's today, where today itself, which from the start I've been in communication with people about the Parliament of Religions coming up in October, and planning for that. There may be some participation in what we have as an interfaith wisdom circle among interfaith ministers. Usually most of them are interfaith, and clergy. A lot more of lately, the Fairfax County Clergy and Leadership Council, which is interfaith related, yes. And we've been undergoing a whole lot of training for that. I'm doing my next to last unit in chaplaincy, which is interfaith oriented, certainly. And I may be serving as a chaplain at Fairfax Hospital or with Capital Caring in a hospice setting. Time to time I'm going to be doing more of that. So that may happen during the week, during the day. I may be participating in services during Sundays and sometimes other days and such with Celebration Center for Spiritual Living, it's on Graham Road. As interfaith clergy, in the role of a chaplain, it's mission critical to not have an agenda, no dogma, and not push or pull, or to really have any previous idea or certainly not indoctrination in mind at all. It's not in my DNA, it never has been. And that's mission critical for that part of my day in the life roles, so to speak, and which is no difficulty for me. It happens organically with me.
What are the key things that stood out with you during your training through seminary to become an interfaith minister?
Oh, so wonderful. I just reveled in attending some of the services from faith traditions where I had not really been at services before, such as the masjid at the mosque. Just that, and that call to prayer, really powerful. And Imam Jahari, who was one of the interfaith imams there, great gift. And was invited with a whole set of 4 or 5 buses of 4th graders to attend a separate from services, just a sort of talk and orientation there. It was right on my level with the 4th graders there. Loved things like that I'm not sure I would have thought to go off and do on my own had we not had all these projects in seminary. And the Mormon services, it was lovely. And who knows? Do you know everything on the planet is within 5 miles of my house? So who knew? All of these things were there. I lived in Northern Virginia all this time, and there was a lot I learned from being a part of seminary. So the greatest gift for me and Quaker services, again, within a 5-mile radius of my house, wasn't on my radar scope before. I didn't know all these places were sort of there. I had always thought of attending Friends service and a Quaker and things like that, but had not done it. Well, we needed to as part of seminary. For me, that was among the greatest gifts. That and a lot of writing and research, and every month just books, the equivalent of a book every month, and at the end a big book on all facets of everything, and questions and answers and conducting services and so forth. Just every aspect that I could think of seminary was just the greatest gift.
Wow.
Thank you for allowing me to remember and dwell in that. So, yeah.
Now, during your work, and you're around different faiths as well as those who are interfaith ministers, what seems to be that key thing, regardless if a person is from their denomination or faith community, and an interfaith minister that kind of just like syncs, like either way is still ABC or 1 and 2. That's the similarities.
Yeah. All faiths at their core have agape love. However you call it, prema, bhakti, love, selfless, loving service. That agape love that wants nothing, that asks nothing in return and seeks nothing. That is at the core of every single faith, really at the core of it. That love, not in a fluffy cloud, oh, I love this, or love ice cream, or we all use the word a lot, but the capital L, agape type of love, which means unconditional love. That really is what's at the core of all faiths. Now, of course, there's differences in terms of practices and norms and understandings of things and teachings, yes, which gospel is used, what is taught, what is done, which day is the Sabbath. These are all differences that there are at the heart of things, at the real core of it is that.
And from your description, you're mentioning a lot of strengths of being an interfaith minister. What has been the challenges?
Well, you're asking the wrong person for that. I revel in this. I don't get a lot of pushback because I just don't find myself in places where there's things like that, and I welcome difficult questions from people, and I engage with persons who may have a very fixed and even quote-unquote fanatical view of things. I do. And sometimes for a couple of years I've dived into certain teachings, and I do not allow it to affect me. Those opinions or views of things may be there, and they may waft right by me. I am not having a calling of debating with people or trying to convince anyone of anything. So having said that, I'm sure there's challenges. I'll think of something. Well, okay, so those are a challenge would certainly be someone who, or a set of persons who are really fixed on this is only one way. I don't personally find it a challenge. I welcome it, and I don't have a view about anybody's view.
Right.
You see,
Right.
everyone is certainly welcome and grounded, and welcome to be fully grounded and sort of soaked in their own tradition. And I would rejoice in that. So I even talked to a whole group of students in a religion class when it got to hybridity. It was called in that curriculum. And they're from every tradition. I got a lot of tough questions over that whole class.
I'm
and
sure.
I reveled in it. College, students, graduate students, and I welcome that. I don't find challenges per se. I actually run toward them.
Okay, that's fine too.
Certainly there are challenges, but this is my calling, capital C.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I think of something later, I'll call it in.
Sure.
If I remember one.
And it's interesting, we talk about the different groups and how they ask, like, the challenging questions.
Right.
And here's one I have for you, based on your opinion and just observation of the world itself.
Sure.
Do you think there can be peace among the world's religions? Do you think there's that capability?
I absolutely do. I have witnessed it, I've seen it, and there is. Yeah. Let There Be Peace on Earth has been one of my favorite songs. And I'm not saying this from a perspective of an ideology of being in a cloud and not being realistic. I realize there really are serious differences and battles, physical and philosophical ones on the planet. Okay. We've seen it where we don't think people, from Palestinians and Israelites, Jews and Muslims, Christians and Jews, Hindus and Muslims, which we know the history thereof. I have seen countless, infinite numbers of examples from children, like those children camps that are held that bridge understanding, and they think, oh, you're a human being. I know how I can relate to you. I see what that common ground is. We both have blood in our veins. We both sleep at night. We have the same, the 99% of what human things are actually similar. They overlap in those circles of overlaps. I've seen it so many times where it didn't seem like there could be any understanding, any ground of common understanding at all. To know for certain that there can be common understanding, mutual love, and mutual reverence among people. I'm not talking about attempting to convince someone, or certainly not convert anyone or attempt to indoctrinate or anything like that, proselytize, anything like that. I am talking about what you are asking about concerning mutual reverence among humans, regardless of no particular religion, label, faith, regardless of what faith, if there is a faith, immaterial, among human hearts, mutual reverence and understanding among people. Absolutely possible, and I have seen it be as our more natural state. What I have in my living room, and is the masthead on my Facebook page, which I will probably never change, is the painting my mother did of 3 kids in the sandbox, all of different cultures, playing nicely together and beautifully. And it doesn't matter what faith tradition they are, or their background, or their race, or their culture, or what they think about things. They are playing beautifully in the sand. It's based on this song, 3 Kids in a Sandbox. Right. And it's a huge painting that is a symbol of a microcosm of the world, what the world can be. That's what it means.
Wow.
Yeah.
Powerful. Another question that may come to some folks' mind with the type of work that you do, is there really a difference between religion and spirituality? I'm kind of on the same page with Reverend Raymond on that.
It's completely according to, again, with the chaplaincy. I take my cues from other people. I don't have a particular view. Some do. Some might call religion a more established, formal order of things that happen. Christianity and the branches and denominations of that. Hinduism. What's the one with the spheres and that big temple? I am blanking on it. Anyway, that big church along the Beltway. Mormons, I knew it started with M. Mormonism and any faith that you can, Sikhism that you can think of. So I really see that whatever persons are comfortable with, I kind of cue into what term that someone is using, spirituality, religion, and I just adopt to that. It doesn't matter to me. Spirituality among people I've talked to and that share with me and talk with me seems to more mean to people in general in terms of kind of a mysticism, a depth of something, and without a label, more being spiritual in the divine without a concern about what I do, how I might worship or not worship, or where I'm at, or what temple. That seems to be the common definition. This is a longer answer than I planned. I don't personally need to have my own definition, but I track with what people see the differences in between in those things. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. I understand.
Yeah.
I hope our viewers capture that, but I totally understand.
Right.
Okay. And for our viewers, if they want to get in touch with you or learn more about what Interfaith Minister does, or how can they go about doing that? Oh,
sure. Well, again, I'm one of many. So, but they're welcome to email me. It's Vijaya2 at starpower.net. Vijaya is my first name, my actual name, the number 2 at starpower.net. They can reach me most Sundays now at the Celebration Center for Spiritual Living. Okay. Oh, they could, I'm the only Vijay, Vijay, Channahsorah, Channahsorah, on Facebook. I'm the only one probably on the planet. They can friend me. Oh, okay. I can then put people in touch with who they may want to connect with and such. I really tend to often be a bridge. It may not be me, but I'll hook them up with wherever and whoever they might be. Again, I don't have something to try to push or sell or do. But people are welcome to call me. Yeah.
Okay, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Brad, for coming on the show. We appreciate it. We always like to get that feel of what people are doing in their calling around interfaith work, and you're a prime example of that. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Yes.
And thank you, our audience, for watching Interfaith Connections today. For more information, visit our website at www.interfaithconnections.squarespace.com and follow us on Twitter at www.twitter.com/IFC TV show. And thank you so much for watching. Take care. Goodbye.